So welcome to another episode of the P10 Show and what is our isolation series. Today is been a kind of a topic that I have been wanting to discuss for a while, particularly amongst my clients. I think this is a very, very hot topic, and I am very, very grateful to be joined by Jayne O'Toole, who is MNU certified nutritionist and head of Real Nutrition.
Yes.
And who was on the same intake as me with MNU as well. Thank you so much for coming to speak to all the guys today. I really, really appreciate it. And I would be interested in asking you to start with just about a bit about you, in the sense of how you found yourself in the nutrition space, because I think there's definitely some value there.
Yeah, so I was a latecomer to working in nutrition. My background initially was broadcasting and marketing. I think like the best way to describe my journey into it would probably be I had like getting really into training initially. I got very into weightlifting and CrossFit after a period of being very overweight. Throughout my life, I've had a lot of issues with self-esteem, disordered eating, different practices, not being very nice to myself for many, many years in different ways. Would have partied a lot, drank a lot of escapist kind of routes. And I worked in the bar industry too, marketing, which kind of was, not the best place for me probably to be working when you're in that mindset. I got really into training, very, very into weightlifting, found a real passion for it. And that kind of just started to transform my perception of myself and my interest in taking care of myself. My confidence was increasing. There's other things that were happening in my life that were supporting that. And I got a little bit of support through counseling and group therapy at one point as well. But as I got more and more into training, I really started to get very focused into my nutrition as well and dialing that in, particularly as I'd been a strict vegetarian for 20 years, not anymore. But that had always interested me in cooking and trying to nourish myself. Even when I wasn't at my healthiest, I still cared about my food composition. But when I got really into lifting, I cared that little bit more about, getting enough protein, making sure I was fueling right for workouts. I'd never gotten so into a sport before, like I did with CrossFit. I did a lot of dance when I was younger, but this is a different ballpark. I started to get a little bit competitive, believe in myself a little bit more, think I might be able to lift some heavy things. And so fueling became a big interest. So I thought I would probably go more the route of coaching. So I did my level 1, I did some specialist courses, I did some kettlebell coaching, things like that. But nutrition just kept nipping at my heels a little bit. So I started with a very basic online course. My gym then that I was with at the time asked me to start doing like nutrition challenges and stuff with people. And the more I got into it, the more I realized I didn't know, and the more, like, always a healthy dose of imposter syndrome with me. And it was like more and more I wanted to learn, and I knew I needed to do more. So after doing a bunch of challenges, I then did precision nutrition. That made me realize again how little I did know and that I needed to increase my knowledge. So I started working as a practitioner then, but I just kept feeling like I needed to go further and further and do a little bit better. And I was learning all the time with experience, but I really wanted to go further. So I looked into going back fully and like going back to college for 4 years, doing the works. I asked around a lot of people, listened to like a lot of people I respected in the industry. And it was actually Danny Lennon, Sigma Nutrition, heard about MNU, said like that sounds like it might be the route for me. And then the rest is kind of history of the last few years since then. Fast track that last bit. So yeah, that's how I got here. It's a random little journey to latecomer to the nutrition realm.
I think there's definitely some, and that's kind of why I was keen to ask, because so many of I think on the current intake of MNU, there's 3 of my clients that are currently doing it. And I think that there's a few people that that were on our intake of it, I think are just great advocates of just not necessarily like jacking in what they've done, but kind of looking at a potential change of career and kind of exploring that. And obviously you've done it with great success. And I think that it's just something to reinforce that if someone is listening or watching and has an interest in nutrition, then there are these fantastic, like I say, there's these fantastic kind of real in-depth courses that teach you a lot about nutrition, that you can become certified, insurable practitioners, and you should just go for it. You should just go for it for sure. And one of the things, if you did not pick up on what Jayne just said, Sigma Nutrition or Sigma Nutrition Radio is probably the best nutrition podcast there is out there. So if you are looking for resources, there is the first thing that you will get from today. So in terms of one of what we wanted to discuss today, we want to talk all things kind of female health. We want to talk around the menstrual cycle. Funnily enough, I was actually listening to a podcast which took me to a blog last week, and there's some real, I mean, some of the things that I don't even want to say some of the things they were saying, particularly about the use of kind of low carb, vegan style kind of diets and how they are more beneficial. And so we just want to debunk a lot of myths around that. I just wanted the first thing to talk about is, what's your experience in terms of kind of talking about periods and talking about the menstrual cycle as a whole, in the sense of, are the people that you talk to, or the people that you work with, are they kind of quite upfront in terms of talking about it? How much is there still a stigma around it in your sense?
I try and make it easy on myself when it comes to my clients and bringing up the topic of their menstrual cycle by having it in their pre-consultation form. So it kind of puts it on the table right away that it's something that's important to me, that it's something that I want to know about. And I just try and bring it up quite quickly and just drop it into conversation. As I feel like how I talk about it is going to dictate how somebody feels about it. If I make a big deal out of it, it's going to feel like it's a big deal. And I think these days, thankfully, the stigma is dropping a little bit. I'm loving the amount of male coaches that are stepping up, talking about it, being open about it, making it something that their clients can be comfortable speaking to them about, because that's hugely important. It's being confident about talking about it. It is the most natural thing in the world. And I think all of us, so many women will call it their monthlies or all these different names for it and stuff to kind of, to kind of curb the embarrassment of speaking about the most natural process in the world. It is lessening. More people are speaking about it. You see so much more about it online, and there's a lot more good information coming out now as well. I know there's a lot of rubbish, but I do think that the solid information when it comes to the menstrual cycle is drowning out the kind of rubbish stuff and the dietary methods that are across the board not the wisest to go for. But I do think that if you talk about it up front and openly straight away, put all the cards on the table about it, it's going to make people a lot more comfortable from the get-go. And
no, I was go on.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so what are the kind of the I think the first thing that I would be just to put out to the listeners is just a general explanation of the cycle itself, because my experience is that even females, they don't actually know when the cycle kind of starts and ends as such, and the kind of the dates in which they kind of align and the phases that happen within the cycle. There's just this general lack of understanding around it and all this kind of stuff. So do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's knowledge is power. It's so empowering to know about your cycle for so many different reasons. I highly recommend that all women listening here right now who do not do this yet, download an app to track your period. Even if you do it in your diary, it's fine. That's a good start point, putting it in the calendar in your phone or in a written diary if you have one, mark it down, even a little symbols to remind you. But I highly recommend getting one of the apps. Now, some good ones would be Flow, Eve, Period Diary. There are numerous others, and they're hugely helpful for tracking your cycle, tracking your temperature, your mood, your sleep, all of these different factors that can shift and change throughout your cycle. And external factors and internal factors can impact these, and it helps make you really aware of when there is shifts or changes in them, and to understand your cycle a little bit more. Like anything I talk about today, there's general phases, there's general guidelines when it comes to like training and recommendations, but honestly, we're all very unique, we're all very different. How we're impacted by our cycle is very different. So, never sell yourself short because of it's a certain part of your cycle, or, don't undervalue yourself. Always track your own, understand how you feel. Not everybody's going to get the same PMS or bloating or anything like that. Know your cycle, know your body, and that's going to be really powerful in how you treat yourself throughout it, and spotting issues when they come along before they become a bigger issue. So within your cycle, there are two primary phases. And the first phase is the follicular phase. And that is the first 14 days of your period. Now, we say period is 28 days, like your menstrual cycle is 28 days, but it could range, like most women are not that accurate. Like it's going to range from like 24 to like 36 on average, but we say 28. So that's like a rough estimate. So your follicular phase is the first 14 days of your period. So that's from day 1 is the day you bleed, and then it's all the way through for 14 days until you ovulate. And then you start preparing for pregnancy or potential pregnancy. So the next phase of your period is the luteal phase. Now, this is the time in your period where if you do suffer from PMS or any of those negative symptoms, it's during the luteal phase that they start to kick in. This is when, like, progesterone rises, and this is when your womb, the wall starts thickening in preparation for pregnancy. So yeah, if you're going to get any of the lethargy or, swelling, bloating, any of that kind of feelings, or PMS symptoms in general, it's always in the luteal phase that this will occur. And knowing this means you can plan for it. Means you show yourself a lot more empathy and kindness when that period comes along. You understand your abilities in training. You understand if your appetite can ramp up in the luteal phase. Your energy needs can shift too, and you can be a little bit hungrier, and you genuinely are like burning a little bit more at times. So it's something you can account for as well. So they're the two primary phases of your period. First 14 days of the follicular phase. This is from the first day you bleed straight through to ovulation. And that's when you're feeling kind of good. Everything's kind of rosy usually. And then luteal phase is when you are preparing for pregnancy, progesterone's rising. And if you do suffer from PMS, it'll be around this time.
Yeah, I think that's a really big thing to kind of make note, because like you said, in terms of this idea of knowledge being power, you can implement then or have some baseline of a structure that can account for all of these. And it isn't always as simple as that. I mean, obviously I'm a male, but I feel as if I vicariously live periods through many different females and kind of have this awareness of the vast degree of kind of symptoms that kind of manifest themselves. For some females, it is, I'm not saying it's straightforward, but it's a fairly, they manage it really, really, like I say, in a straightforward manner. But for some other females, it's a lot more difficult to manage. And so within that, having, I mean, even just a baseline of, I can think of one client who is very aware, and she literally just has a calorie structure around her cycle. And okay, that's a very kind of narrow-minded way to look at it, but in what suits her lifestyle, and being quite intentional in the way that she's going about dieting at the moment, literally the week before her period, she is in a calorie surplus, because we know that her symptoms are that she just doesn't really care, and her mood is completely down, and so we just account for that, and then we put on more aggressive strategies later on when it's more appropriate. And having this understanding, and like you say, being empathetic, and being empathetic to yourself in those situations is hugely important. Are there, in your mind, because I've just kind of touched upon calories and you've touched upon, you mentioned kind of energy increasing or energy output increasing at certain times, as well as energy. Are there other nutritional considerations that you would put in terms of or relate to a female cycle?
Well, when it comes to like around that, your luteal phase, you will kind of get more carbohydrate cravings, but that is usually because of the low energy and your energy needs increasing. So I would say account for that. If that is something that you feel like, increase your carbohydrates a little bit, add in like you do with your client. It's exactly the right way to go. It's like account for it. If you kick in and want some more carbs, even add in a couple of squares extra of chocolate. Account for it. Don't try and restrict yourself more. It's just going to make it worse. It's just going to like make you more prone to overeating or going further than you planned on. When it comes to your nutrition in general around your whole menstrual cycle, healthy balanced diet is always the way. Like protein, I'm a big fan of protein. I've done entire talks on the subject, but protein is hugely important. Making sure you are hitting sufficient protein, which I've no doubt like this is something that like your clients and people listening to this would be aware of, and making sure you are getting that optimized. So like 1.4 grams per kg body weight plus, I would say, is roughly where I try and have most of my clients, and that's really important. Make sure you are getting lots and lots of micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, loads of vegetables, some fruit, whole grains, legumes. Keep those fiber levels up. With a variety of fruits and vegetables, you're going to optimize things like magnesium and zinc and stuff like that naturally. So, and they can be helpful, but getting them through dietary means is going to be more beneficial. There are like benefits to omega-3, so including some oily fish in your diet like salmon, or supplementing with an omega-3 supplement, or algae if you're vegan is a good option there as well. Target the like 1 gram of combined EPA and DHA. Again, they're the magic ingredients in omega-3. If anyone is seeking out a supplement, look for the EPA and DHA content and aim for 1 gram of that combined. Specifically if you don't eat oily fish. If you have a couple of portions of oily fish a week, you're pretty good. Also, calcium is important. Calcium is important for our bones. You can get calcium through your diet through dairy and beans. Sardines are actually randomly very high in calcium as well. Figs, seeds, they're all really good dietary ways to get calcium. You want to get around 1,200 milligrams a day is about the right amount to get in of calcium to optimize it. Supplement wise, there are some evidence-based supplements around PMS, and they don't tend to be the ones that everyone goes for. That I tend to see, recommended would be stuff like Evening Primrose and EIM and stuff like that, whilst the more evidence-based ones are a lot simpler than that. Omega-3 is really impactful for overall health and has been seen to be supportive for your menstrual cycle and for PMS. Vitamin D3, which is always important. We can't get it through our diet, so we don't get enough sunshine, and particularly not at the moment. And vitamin D3 is important for our immune function as well, but deficiency in D3 is associated with PMS. So if you suffer from PMS and you're deficient in D3, if you sort that out, it can be really helpful. So calcium supplementation or through diet. There is a supplement that I'm a huge fan of that I have posted about quite regularly, and it's saved my poor suffering from PMS, and it's called chasteberry. Now, chasteberry comes under 3 different names, and it's chasteberry or vitex or Agnus castus is the genus. So you'll see it under all 3 of those names. It's a herbal supplement. It has got strong evidence behind it, which is fantastic. I've been taking it since before I knew I had strong evidence behind it. So it was great when I got back up. But it's a herbal supplement. It's quite difficult enough to get in Ireland, I know, in pharmacies or health food stores. So I order mine online to get the right dose. You need to take 400 to 500 milligrams of dried vitex per dose to get the benefits. Now, this is something I've posted about quite a lot. So if people want more information afterwards, I can send some links or details to you about it for people. But it is really beneficial. I personally, like in my own experience, have had great results with it with clients, and it really does help to regulate your prolactin levels and your progesterone levels, which are really impactful on PMS. There is like little caveats with it, with if you are breastfeeding or lactating or anything like that. I wouldn't recommend taking it. I would talk to your doctor if you're around those kind of phases, or if you're concerned about it, because it does impact prolactin, and prolactin impacts milk production. So that is a consideration, but it is, yeah, it's definitely one I would say if you are struggling with PMS in particular, it's worth giving a go.
Just had you just had a question on the Facebook just to say, can you repeat the three names that it Vitex or
Vitex, Agnes Castus, or Chasteberry. It's Chasteberry is the primary name, but you will see it a lot under the name of Vitex. And a lot of supplements will mix it with other things. So I would say to try and get the pure, get like the pure Vitex Chasteberry on its own, and make sure that the dose per day is 400 to 500 milligrams of the dried herb within each dose. Like I order mine online on Amazon from Nature's Way, and it works great for me. And it's not super expensive, but I would advise, dependent on what the stores are like over there, probably ordering it online and trying it that way, and give it a good 3 months. It's not like you take it and you're sorted. It's like anything, it takes a little bit of time to kick in. So I would say give it a few months to kick in and give it a fair try. But yeah, it's definitely one to check out.
Yeah, definitely. It's Helen's just put, you can get it from Holland and Barrett and all kind of stores like that as well. Yeah, which kind of begs, you've hit something really important there in terms of anything to do with, I suppose, hormones as a whole. There has to be this element of patience. 3 months is usually the minimum in many cases, and so setting your expectations before you kind of engage in any process of change, particularly from a menstrual cycle point of view, it's making sure that you are prepared for that. I think one of the things that is really refreshing, and maybe it's just because of the little bubble that I work within, but there's an increase in kind of culture around yes, we're trying to get results with people, but then people aren't accepting compromising other areas of their life. So working with a client who dieted and then lost her period as a result, and she was like, this isn't right. Whereas I think that previously it would have just been a case of achieve body composition at all costs. In terms of what are your kind of thoughts around kind of bringing, whether it's with conditions like PCOS, whether it's conditions or just in people who just do not have a cycle, what's your kind of first thoughts in terms of nutritional considerations around that?
When you have somebody who either it's like amenorrhea, or hypothalamic amenorrhea would be what it's known as, and that's like an absence of or an irregular cycle, like a highly irregular cycle. First and foremost, I would make sure that they didn't have any pre-existing conditions like PCOS, because there's various reasons why you might lose your cycle. I would recommend going to a doctor, getting your blood work done, making sure that there's nothing else underlying, just in case, just to make sure that there isn't anything hidden there that we haven't noticed. And then pretty much the reason this happens is your body is under stress in some way, shape, or form. So this stress can be from diet, you're under stress from low energy availability. You're not eating enough, you're not getting sufficient calories to fuel your body. That puts your body under stress. Or overtraining is another way that puts your body under stress. So either the overtraining is causing you to burn too much energy than you're consuming, or the overtraining is too much intensity that it's highly stressful on your body. And then there's also the lifestyle factors of stress. So, you know, if you're not sleeping enough, that's going to impact you. That leads to like elevated cortisol as well, higher stress. If your lifestyle is quite stressful, you're going through a stressful period in your life. Particularly say if you're at quite a low body fat already in particular, and then something very stressful happens. You may have healthily maintained a low body fat and healthily maintained your cycle, but then an added stressor in your life, like something dramatic happens, like what we're all going through right now, something very strange and unusual that adds to our stress happens, that can disrupt your cycle as well. Like currently I've noted it and stuff that like there are like I've had disruptions in my own cycle in the last few months with everything that's going on around stress, and a lot of people are commenting on that and noting it, and that's the impact stress and stress around you can have on your cycle. So your menstrual cycle is really, really energy expensive. Like it uses a lot of energy. And when your body's under a lot of stress from whatever factor, be it low energy availability, intensive training, or lifestyle stressors, your body goes, you know what, this is not a favorable environment to house a pregnancy. We're going to shut this system down. We don't need it. We need to protect other organs that are essential. So like your menstrual cycle is not essential, so to speak, compared to your brain, your heart, your lungs. So your body is going to preferentially give the energy to them, and it's going to shut down the cycle that it thinks, you know, it doesn't need, because you're not healthy enough right then and there to get pregnant. So that's an indicator in itself how negative losing your period is. If your body decides to shut it down and goes, you should not get pregnant, you are not healthy, that's a really clear indicator to the damage that this can cause. And that's, while people are talking about it more and realizes it's bad, I don't think they realize the varied and vast impact it can have in general on like very serious areas, and then areas in like training adaptations and things like that as well. It impacts everything. Like you're going to feel, if you lose your period for a significant amount of time, people feel lethargic, you know, the libido drops, your immunity is compromised, so you can get sick a lot easier. You're leaving yourself open to conditions of weakened bones like osteoporosis. Long-term period loss weakens your bones. You know, there's athletes who've lost their periods numerous times trying to make weight and do things like that throughout their life, or keep to a low weight, like marathon runners and stuff, who have ended up with osteoporosis at a very young age because of compromising their cycle to make weight or to be lighter and run faster. You know, and there's also an increased risk of depression. Like within your cycle, if you notice when you've got PMS or anything like that, your serotonin drops. So there is impact on your mood and emotions within your cycle. So when you don't have your cycle, you're not producing the same hormones, the same things aren't happening within your body, and it can lead to depression and impact it quite dramatically. And then in a more kind of like, because most people who are watching and listening to this are into training and, you know, want to get fitter, your period can really be like, certain phases of it can really be like an ergogenic aid. You know, you can make it work to your benefit and your training, and as a coach, like in how you program for people, when they know their cycle and understand it, you can use your cycle to your benefit. Like during the follicular phase, when you are feeling quite awesome and like, you know, you're kind of fired up, I always say, like, it's like when you're like She-Ra, you know, it's a really good time for people to increase intensity. For a lot of people, as I said, not everyone's the same, but to increase intensity, if you're going for PBs, heavy lifts, things like that, that first 14 days can be really good for that. And then in the luteal phase, when you are a little bit more lethargic in that, you know, you can move more into aerobic stuff, a little bit of endurance work or yoga, you know, lighter kind of training, or rein it back a bit. Or even if you're not reining it back, you just might manage your expectations of yourself a little bit better in what you're capable of. If you miss a lift or if you're not feeling very strong, instead of beating yourself up over it, you kind of go, all right, you know, yeah, I'm a little bit tired today, and you just be a little bit kinder to yourself. But around your period, if you're not getting your period, you know, during that follicular phase, you're not getting those adaptations. And during that phase as well, you gain lean muscle mass better as well. So you're missing out on training adaptations. You're missing out on the ability to gain muscle as well as you would have previously with a healthy cycle. You're risking depression, you're risking low libido, you're risking low mood, you're risking your immunity. Like the ramifications are huge of not having a cycle, and it can take time to get it back, you know, and people never really want to hear the recommendations for getting your cycle back. First and foremost, irrelevant of the reasons you lost it, is increase calories. Like that would be the first thing I do with a client who's having issues with their cycle, and like who we've checked blood work and stuff, like get the calories up, you know, increase them, you know, to like a minimum of maintenance or over. Like I would probably go a little bit over just to cover bases. And you just kind of have to accept that there may be a little bit of a gain. Your body needs it, and we need to limit stress. Dieting is a stressor. You're dieting at all in any extreme, you have to bring everything up. I would reduce the intensity of training, which again people don't really want to hear, especially if you're increasing their calories. It's a lot of fear and like gaining some weight, and particularly if you've put your body under that stress, it's highly likely you've been dieting to extreme or training too hard, so you're probably not going to be in a great mindset to accept increasing your calories, reducing your training. But at the end of the day, this is actually probably going to do your body the world of good, and your long-term goals and your health, more importantly. So yeah, reduce training. If there's a lot of lifestyle stressors, I would say try and get that in order through like meditation, journaling, methods that help you reduce your stress and manage your stress a little bit better, or going to speak to someone if it's even more extreme. But try to manage all of the stresses around you. Calories first, reduce training, also manage your stress levels outside of it, and wait and be consistent with that and stick with it and give it time to come back. It won't come back overnight. It'll take your body to start settling, to start calming down, to start getting used to functioning again and believing that your body is ready to be pregnant. And a really important point that people need to realize as well is that you don't have to be at a really low body fat for this to happen. Again, we're all really uniquely different. Different women and men can handle different levels of body fat and leanness before this will happen, and it will depend on a lot of other factors in your life and stresses. But you don't have to be underweight or at a very low body fat or single digit or anything like that for this to happen. If you are somebody even who has quite a bit of body fat you want to lose, if you go on an extreme diet and that's quite stressful for your body in your lifestyle at that time, it can impact your cycle. So don't assume you have to be very lean for this to happen. Don't write it off if it happens and you're not very lean and assume that it's just a bit late or it'll just come back. The same methods will be used no matter where you're at. If you have got quite a lot of body fat to lose, you may go more to maintenance than go into a surplus to try and manage it. But reducing stress for everybody in all of those means is the way forward for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point to make note of. And as you said, particularly in the current situation that we are in, we have to be compassionate with the sense that this whole lockdown situation is going to bring about more stress. It's going to make it more difficult. Our emotions are going to be more undulating. Emotional stress, physical stress, it's almost in one. Yep. And so just making sure that the things that we can control, the dietary aspects and things like that, we really do kind of re-emphasize those and kind of put a bit more tighter in the way that we manage those. There is a question that's come through. If you don't get your period regularly because of birth control or your birth control, do the negative aspects still apply, i.e. lethargy, being prone to depression and that kind of thing?
No, when it comes to birth control, again, like that's really going to depend on the birth control you're on, and it wouldn't be something that I would have a ton of expertise in because it's obviously medical and all of that. But when it comes to your birth control, your periods aren't real periods. They're like fake periods with most birth control to make you feel like everything's functioning as it is. So your birth control is simulating the hormones. So it's giving you the same little doses of hormones to stop you getting pregnant, but to make sure your body, like, dependent on the pill and what hormone doses it's using, it is changing things a little bit. There's still not a hell of a lot known, I don't think, like, on a lot of pills on like long-term usage. But it really is a case of, I wouldn't be using your pill to skip your period regularly. That is one thing I would say. I would like allow your body to go through the phases that it's supposed to on your period. Don't use it as and take your pack constantly through if you're on the pill or other things. Allow your body to go through the normal phases with it is probably a good idea as often as possible. Like, a lot of athletes will skip their period that way. And I don't think they realize, like, it's like that when you start bleeding, like that point of your period, you're actually at a really good point hormonally where you can feel amazing, and like there's a lot of like potential for adaptations and stuff then, and a lot of power in that. Like, when you're at that phase, you feel very strong and powerful, so you don't want to miss out on that either by skipping it. But yeah, it's a tough call, and it's very individual when it comes to the type of birth control you're on. It doesn't have the same negative impact as losing your period, however, because you potentially still have a period that would come back when you come off that. You know, there's still the potential of it there. But yeah, it's not something I would have a huge amount of information on or knowledge on. They're always changing, the pills for contraception.
They really are. The blog that I was referencing in the beginning, and this kind of, I would love to kind of expand a bit more on some of the kind of maybe some of the more vitamins and micronutrient side of it, because I read a blog last week that it must have been written about, I think it was about 6 months old, but it's basically said that if you begin the vegan diet and you lose your period, you're doing it right. And yeah,
Oh my God.
I'll try and find it for you, but it was ridiculous, basically. But it brings out the question in the sense of, well, why might this happen if someone is engaging in, particularly we're seeing things like the ketogenic diet, like vegan diet, which, and I have used, like, I have vegan clients. I have used the ketogenic diet, granted only once in the time that I've been a practitioner, but still, like I said, I'm not here to demonize any form of kind of nutritional structure or diet in that sense. But we have to be aware that when there are eliminations of certain food groups and things like that, there's going to be deficiencies in other micronutrients that may impact our female health in that sense, like lack of there's interesting, I mean, blog posts about the impact of dairy and all this kind of stuff, and then obviously deficiency in iodine and iron and other things, and obviously B12 being supplements in that sense. Is there what are your kind of thoughts first and foremost, and then do you generally pay any attention to kind of things like iron intake? You've mentioned calcium already, and then other things like that.
I would, when it comes to if someone's a vegan, yeah, like your B vitamins and iron are a consideration. And if someone has quite heavy periods as well, I would suggest that they get your blood work done for when it comes to vitamin B and iron. It's easily tested for, and if you have quite heavy periods, you can be prone to getting low in iron and B12. Like, so that is something to consider if you do get quite lethargic around your period, and they are very, very heavy. And they are the biggest consideration when you are vegan, to make sure you get them. Like, you have a lot of the time you do need to take like a B12 supplementation, because like your animal products are the primary source. So a supplement can be quite necessary if you get low in it. So that would be a consideration. But if it comes to like losing your period or irregular periods with any diet, it's always going to be about stress, low energy availability. You're not nourishing yourself. You're like not getting enough energy. You're not fueling your energy needs. Your body is feeling stressed out by it. It's missing out on something that's stressing it out. So I would say if people are becoming vegan and losing their period, they're cutting out foods and they're not replacing them. You know, they're like cutting out meat and dairy, but they're not replacing them with something like soy that's a complete protein. like getting in tofu, tempeh, or other things like that to replace the lack of protein, replace that kind of nourishment. They just cut out a lot of food, and a lot of people make the decision to go vegan without actually doing their research. It can be a very healthy diet. Like I said, I was vegetarian for 20 years of my life, very strict veggie. And I still eat primarily plant-based, but I like a bit of meat now and then. So I'm all for eating primarily plant-based. And like, if you're doing it for ethical reasons as a vegan, like, great, do you, it's a positive thing, but make sure you are nourishing yourself. Make sure that you do your research and experiment with foods and explore foods and work on getting sufficient proteins, or learning how to mix your meals to get the right amount of nutrients too. You can get tons of micronutrients and minerals. You can get all your magnesium and your zinc and all these different things, but you're going to have to work a little harder to get things like B12. And while there is iron in a lot of leafy green vegetables and certain legumes and stuff like that, it's tough to get, and it's not tame iron. And our body does absorb iron from animal sources better, so you might need to have more as a vegan from vegan sources to kind of make up for it. So I always say, when it comes to making any extreme dietary decisions, make sure you are choosing something for the right reasons. Like, vegan is the only one that I really like would be for ethical reasons, which the others are just, they're usually by dietary preference or because you think it's going to be healthier. But make sure you do your research into what you're doing with anything beyond vegan, which can be for ethical reasons. If you're choosing a more extreme method of eating like keto or anything like that, I'd say make sure you enjoy higher fat food.
Yeah.
And I always say to anyone, like, I try not to knock things too much, but any dietary practice where you have to supplement, specifically look out for certain supplements to make it healthy, makes me question that dietary practice. So like, if you consider stuff like keto and like carnivore diet and things like that, where you have to actually take fiber supplements because you're not getting enough fiber from, which is something that's extremely important to our health, or you're not getting foods that provide certain nutrients and you have to go find stuff to supplement them, then there's something up there. That should be your biggest alarm bell. Now, if you truly enjoy eating higher fat diet, go for it and stuff like that. But like, so keto, I will be like, yeah, if you really enjoy it, do it, and you do get what you need and you find it sustainable. Carnivore, different story. Yeah. But consider your dietary practice. If any way of eating is impacting the menstrual cycle, there's something wrong with how you're eating.
So the last couple of things that we talk about, because we've touched upon amenorrhea, and then I personally have two clients that have PCOS, and it's even just awareness of PCOS and what it is certainly on the rise, and it really brings around some really important nutritional considerations that people should be aware about. And I have huge amounts of empathy with women who are dealing with PCOS and endometriosis as well. So yeah, I'd love to hear your take on these things and nutritional considerations around those things.
Yeah, PCOS, it's complicated and really, really difficult for people. It does make things like weight loss, fat loss quite difficult. Your energy needs can be really lessened by the condition. So to be diagnosed with it, you need to have 2 out of 3 conditions, and that's polycystic ovaries, hypoandrogenism, or anovulation. So that's like menstrual difficulties, which we kind of talked about earlier a little bit. Weight loss is a really, really key factor in treating PCOS, but unfortunately, weight loss is really, really difficult when you have PCOS, because your energy needs are lessened. I think they can be about 30% lower than someone who would have all trained the same amount, same age, weight, everything like that. You just don't burn calories in the same way. So it does make weight loss an awful lot harder. So when it comes to it, some of the most important things that you have to consider would be resistance training for training. You want to make sure you're doing a little bit of resistance training. A lot of people with PCOS can have insulin resistance and things like that as well, which is something to consider. Impaired appetite is really, really common. Metabolic, reproductive issues are things to really note. And it also can have it can also have an impact on you psychologically. And like depression can be quite common with people with PCOS, not just because of, I suppose, how difficult it makes lifestyle, it also does actually impact your mood. And there's also an issue with high protein oxidation at night. So when it comes to your diet, weight loss is going to be really beneficial, and it is the first intervention that you really want to take into account. And because there is higher protein oxidation at night, your first consideration for weight loss is going to be increasing your protein. So you would have a higher protein level you would go for a client who has PCOS to support the oxidation and also the decreased ability to gain muscle. So increased protein, and then what I was saying about resistance training to help with those adaptations too. So nutrition and lifestyle considerations are going to have to be brought into play to support it, and it's not going to be easy. Adequate fruit intake is important. It has been shown to help with your protein oxidation and to support it. Resistance training, HIT. When it comes to supplements, we're going to, like, a lot of the same supplements when it comes to the cycle keep coming into play. So your omega-3, again, which I mentioned for your menstrual cycle as well, is really important, making sure you get enough of it. With PCOS, it's been shown to help with insulin sensitivity as well. So it's another reason to supplement with it. And vitamin D3, again, so if you're not already taking it after all the conversations about it, it's also been linked to help with insulin resistance, which is an issue with PCOS, and be helpful. There is some research that probiotics may be beneficial, so that could be something worth considering. They may have a positive effect, but that's a very open one. And then I think the primary one that is of most interest, and I have used with great success on a few clients, is Martin McDonald's recommendation of inositol. Like as you know, like Martin's done so much research on PCOS and like talks and that on, it's a specialist area. And inositol, I have had clients take it for menstrual irregularities and also for PCOS support, and even had a pregnancy at the end of one of them, which was fantastic for someone who was struggling. And when it comes to inositol, it's actually really easy to find. Myo-inositol would be what you would see it called, typically would be the one I would see most commonly, and you'll get it easily on sites like bulk powders or MyProtein. It's a carbohydrate powder, very cheap, very accessible, and for people with PCOS, the dose is 2 grams daily for about 6 months, until you start seeing results or feeling the benefits. And it can help improve menstrual dysfunction, hyperinsulinemia, and hyperandrogenism, which is typically some people with PCOS, you'll see they can get hair in unusual like parts of their body and stuff like that, and how they hold their weight can be different. You can more around their midline. Your body composition can shift slightly due to the imbalance in hormones as well. And then there is L-carnitine too, which is another one to consider, which can help with weight loss as well, potentially, and improve insulin sensitivity. And that's 250 milligrams daily is the dose that's recommended. So there would be the primary supplements. Yeah, it's like dietary wise, approach a healthy balanced diet, high protein. You're going to want to get lots and lots of veggies in and bulk out your diet with volume in that way, because your calories could end up having to come down pretty low to lose weight. Unfortunately, it's like, yeah, as I said, 40%, I think 30 to 40% reduced burn. Like, so you're going to burn calories about 40% less than someone else in the same circumstances, which is, it's horrible. It's not easy. I would love to be able to say, like, give a better outcome, but it's going to be tough for a lot of women who have the condition. to lose weight, but losing weight is going to be really helpful
Yeah.
to alleviate symptoms.
There'll be a few people who will be listening to this with PCOS for sure, and for those that kind of don't have it or kind of maybe lack a bit of awareness of the condition, like the 30% kind of decrease in energy expenditure for if you maintain your body weight at 2,000 calories per day, then it all of a sudden with PCOS can be as little as 1,400 calories just to maintain your body weight. And so that if you're trying to engage in some form of fat loss efforts and enforce some form of calorie deficit, I mean, it just obviously then a 500 calorie deficit or a 400 takes your calories to 1,000 calories per day, which is not a fun place to have that in. And so reiterating these kind of good practices of protein, which we know is a satiating macronutrient, and then good habits around our micronutrient intake, but more so from fact, yes, micronutrient intake is fantastic, but then also around just maximizing food volume and other things like fiber intake, promoting satiety as well as health as well, is so important, and that's where you place your emphasis. And then even before kind of having this idea of, yes, weight loss is a big part of it, but also don't forget to lay the foundation, and it's almost set those behaviors in practice first, even if they don't go quite right, even if your calories maybe don't line up with a complete calorie deficit to start with. Promote protein, promote micronutrients, make them appetizing for you, and make them a part of your kind of baseline of behaviors, and then kind of really kick on from there, because it's really something that I have huge amounts of empathy with,
Lots of self-kindness, like lots of self-care, like make sure really prioritize your sleep, you know, prioritize some meditation, breathing, like really make sure you make time for self-care within your week, particularly if you're struggling like that, because I'm a big fan of that anyway. I think it's hugely important that everybody should prioritize some self-care. Like I practice gratitude, I journal, and all those things to try and support my stress levels. And I think when you're struggling like that and you have a condition like PCOS, it's even more important, like introduce more mindful practice, even with your eating slower, slowing down, being present and aware is going to be helpful. And yeah, really up your self-care game and be kind to yourself, because it is going to be tough. So if you can show yourself a little bit of love, you know, to help support the journey, I highly recommend making time to take care of yourself.
I think that goes for PCOS, but that goes through, I suppose, every element of what we've discussed today, through just general management of your menstrual cycle, through to obviously amenorrhea and PCOS as well, and then just life in general, of course.
Yeah, well, sleep is huge, and that's the thing, like at the cornerstone of absolutely everything I think that we ever speak about. Like when you really look behind it all, if you don't get sufficient sleep, that's going to put your body under so much stress in so many ways that it could have ramifications for all that we've talked about tonight, and for like training and like for nutrition and your choice, not only your choices and like your eating becoming more disinhibited, but like when it comes to training, it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall if you're not optimally fueled and you're not optimally rested. You know, it's just not going to work. So behind everything like this, when it comes to stress management, which we know is a huge impact on all of the conditions we've talked about, if you're not getting enough sleep, you are going to struggle with all of the above.
Definitely. And then some of the things in terms of sleep for those that are listening, like just in terms of, like say, dietary choices, the impact on your ghrelin levels and all this kind of stuff, you'll just make your life more difficult to just comply. You can have all the best intentions in the world, but you'll just it's looking at the list of things of like, am I making my life as easy as possible? And if the sleep isn't there, then you probably need to challenge yourself on that and establish some sort of routine around that, for sure.
Well, people will always train, and like I've always just like noticed that people will be willing to go to the gym and train their asses off day in, day out. Like that's usually the easiest thing to get people to do. But when it comes to prioritizing the lifestyle factors to support that, and like stuff that will like sleep, that will help prioritize them moving more throughout the rest of their life. They're the harder things to get people to implement. It's like, and it really is the foundation to everything.
Yeah, for sure. The one of the things we speak with some of my clients about is the sense of the idea of discipline being a sense of self-compassion, and what will your future self thank you for? And sometimes your future self will thank you for kind of giving yourself a kick up the backside and going to the gym. But there is many cases, and it's more often than not, that your future self will thank you for just prioritizing rest. And in some cases, I even with myself kind of creating a bit more disattachment with exercise and letting it become a bit more of a moment of play type thing, having no real attachment to the outcome. And my future self, I know, will thank me. And that's the dialogue that I'm having with myself. And so particularly this idea of just, it's like the notion of just, if you want to lose weight, just move more and eat less. It's not that simple. And you have to ask your intention behind each action. And like I say, what will your future self thank you for in that sense? And it will often than not be just slow down. I'm going to offer out, I always finish with 3 questions that I ask every single guest. And whilst I'm doing this, if anyone has any further questions, then please just either the guys that are watching on Facebook or you ladies that are with us here, please pop them in the comments box whilst I am asking these questions. But we always finish with 3 questions. Kind of geared around isolation and lockdown living, and because this is the theme of life at the moment. So number 1 is, if you were to eat one meal, breakfast, lunch and dinner, for the rest of the time that you're in lockdown, what would you be eating?
Ooh, breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Same meal.
Oh, that's hard. Breakfast, lunch and dinner. Okay, the first thing that actually came to mind really surprises me, because I wasn't expecting it to come to mind, but shakshuka, like baked eggs and like a spicy tomatoey sauce. I love flavor, like I'm a little flavor junkie, like, and I think it comes from being a vegetarian. I got really experimental with cooking when I was a veggie, just to make food more interesting. And I'm trying to think of a meal that would suit breakfast, lunch and dinner. And that kind of come to mind, with nice crusty home-baked sourdough bread on the side and feta cheese sprinkled on top.
Yes, I mean, anything with sourdough is. I mean, it's a compulsory part of a London diet. I think it's the most basic form of a London diet, that you have to have some form of fancy sourdough in most people, and some form of avocado as well. Louis Padian, he said a stew when I asked him that. He said a which I thought was the most weird answer that we've had so far. Second question is, in terms of things to watch, what are you watching? Is there any recommendations on Netflix? Disney Plus is my go-to. Anything like that you can suggest to the listeners to watch?
What have I enjoyed? Afterlife 2. Oh, glass cage of emotion, but amazing. Like, I really liked the first one, but I just binge watched the 6 episodes of that over the last 2 days. It's incredible. He's just brilliant anyway, but that show is just incredible. Really enjoyed that. What else have I watched that was pretty good? I've only got Netflix. I actually don't have normal TV or anything. I we watch movies more. I just have Netflix. Like, watched Ozark. That was pretty good. What did I watch? It was because I've watched a few documentaries recently that were pretty cool, I think. Ozark I watched. Unorthodox I watched, and that was pretty good. Afterlife. I watch all the superhero stuff, so I've gone through all of them, all the Marvel, all of that stuff. Bit nerdy like that. And I love them as well. They were really, really good. And then I also watch a lot of cookery shows. So like the Big Family Showdown. I just binge watch that whole series. That's my like daytime stuff. I love watching cookery shows because I love cooking. And I'm also a RuPaul's Drag Race fan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have watched all of them. Yeah,
Wow.
that's my kind of fun stuff, my mind candy. But yeah, a real variety of stuff. So if anyone has any recommendations for me, please let me know.
I mean, that last scene of Afterlife 2 it was just, yeah, it's the closest I've come to crying in a long, long time. It was
Oh,
emotional. But
very, very emotional.
so funny though at the same time. So, so funny. So if you
So
haven't,
real.
yes. Yeah.
So real and relatable and natural. And yeah, that's why it gets you.
Yes, definitely. Final one is your favorite method slash methods, whether they be kind of more conventional or whether they be slightly abstract of self-care. Like, what are you doing to kind of stay sane? What are you doing to kind of manage your routine? And obviously in a tighter lockdown than we're currently experiencing.
So yeah, I am prone to getting quite stressed out, and it's something that has been an issue for me in the past. So I already knew immediately that it was very important for me to schedule myself so much. Like when I've worked with a counselor before, they have actually literally sat me down and made me schedule self-care because I was so bad at applying it myself back. So I make a point of having a minimum of three tasks. 3 tasks a day is all I put in. I have to achieve these 3 things are what I want to achieve. I don't overload myself. I literally go 3 things, and they can be anything. They can be a work task. They can be something physical that I want to do. It can be reading or self-care. But there's 3 things specifically every day that I have. And that helps me keep some structure and routine, but it also helps me manage my expectations of myself. Because when I put too much in, I can't chill until I achieve everything. And if I don't achieve it all, I feel like I let myself down. And I know this about myself, so I work around it. And, I was listening to a psychologist talk about a lot of this stuff, and it was, you will think you can be so productive during lockdown. You think that you have all this time that you're going to be able to do so much, but you do have to relate to the fact that the underlying stress and this underlying anxiety, no matter how positive a person you are, no matter how much of an attitude you have of gratitude and positivity, there's underlying stress there. There's a lot of uncertainty. And when that's in the back of your mind, it can impact how productive you are, keeping your mind focused on tasks. So create structure, try and create routine, but manage your expectations of what you can get done each day. And I've been kind of trying to do that for myself. I'm staying active because that is something that I really enjoy. Exercise is a big part of my life. I enjoy it. If I fare well at it, I'm doing a lot of at-home workouts. I meditate and read regularly because that's something that really relaxes me. I usually do it at nighttime. I have a sleep routine where I go into bed and I'll read whatever book I'm reading for a little bit, and then I will either, depending on how I'm feeling, do like a short meditation, even if it's just 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. Or if I'm really tired and I just don't feel like meditating, I put on a sleep story I use the Calm app, and I find the sleep stories really relaxing and soothing, so I put them on. And then I practice gratitude. So every morning and every evening, I use a 5-minute journal. Keeps me on point. I'm on my second or third of them right now. Consistently comes everywhere with me, which means every morning I have to think of 3 things I'm grateful for, what will make my day good. There's positive quotes, and then in the evening I write out 3 things that were positive that day, and that helps start my day positive, end my day positive. If my head is really a flurry and really awash with a lot of things and I can't quiet my mind, I always have a notebook beside my bed, and I'll either write the thoughts just to get them out of my head, or I will do a checklist. If it's things that I think I have to do the next day and I think about them too much, I will write them down. Like, I've woke up in the middle of the night thinking of things sometimes, and at the same time I'll get up and I'll write it down just to get it out of my head and give myself the opportunity to quieten down. So I have found those tools that I put a lot of them in place already, thankfully, before this, because I believe if I hadn't had these more cemented over, particularly I'd say the last year, I really, really focused on really supporting myself with these things. and being very consistent with them. I'd done them before that, but I would lack consistency. Being really consistent, I think, has supported me massively coming into this situation. And acceptance, understanding that your feelings are going to go up and down. On our subject we're talking about tonight, my PMS has ramped up, even though I take things to support it. I've had the first round was like, I didn't know what was wrong, and it was just the increased anxiety of everything that's going on, really ramped up, and my cycle was a little bit thrown off, even though it had been quite consistent. It got really thrown off as well. I was a little bit late, but now, because I track it and I'm aware of this and know what's happening, it kind of helps me manage my expectations. And I noted that it was off. I was aware that something had shifted, and the underlying stress management is going to be really helpful for that as well. So yeah, a lot more self-care and kindness, and trying to manage my expectations of myself.
Yeah, amazing. I think like the biggest one that I can certainly relate to is just the notion of managing expectations and almost setting them at like a disgustingly low level. That is, and I will say that I was completely guilty of not doing that last week, and it was probably my most difficult week that I experienced in lockdown for sure. And there was a number of attributing factors to that, but largely was because kind of still expect yourself to run on this kind of achieve so much because you've got all this time available, and it doesn't quite work like that. Your psychology doesn't really care for productivity during a time like this. So yeah, managing that. I may have this wrong, and so forgive me if it is, but you did a post about the power of writing once, or writing stuff down.
I did write that shit down. I think it was called. Yeah, I did a long time ago. Yeah,
that always stuck with me, and it's probably, I mean, I kind of dabbled up until that point, and then I read that, I was like, I should write down more stuff, because even just like the journaling and stuff in terms of like typing it down is always kind of, my laptop is always with me. And then immediately after that, I mean, I had notebooks, but I was like, I'm going to just write everything down. And I have a whiteboard that's constantly been scribbled on. Like say, I have a notebook that, like, well, God forbid if anyone got hold of. But
same.
But yeah, there's something so much more powerful about writing stuff down by hand, and it's something that I think that not so much anymore, but I was definitely guilty of losing that connection to it. Even though, and it's proven, because I can't write in lowercase, I have to write in uppercase at all. I've just lost the ability to do so. So yeah, last question is, where can they find you? Where can they reach you at? What's the best places to connect with you?
Probably Instagram. Like, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So I'm Jayne_real nutrition on Instagram, JAYNE, and which is here, but like I know that's something that people get confused. So Jayne_real nutrition. Website is JayneRealNutrition.com. If you want to look at my website and check that out. But Instagram is probably the best for finding me and reaching out. I'm on Facebook too, Jayne Real Nutrition, but Instagram is probably, if you want to ask a question or pop me a message or anything, it'll probably be the one that'd be the most accessible on. Or like email as well. If you go on my Instagram, there's an option to email. Particularly right now, I've said if people have a question or there's something that I can help support with, pop me an email. If it is not an issue to me to get an email. If it's a question that I can help you with, I will, or I will point you in the direction of someone better suited, or a resource that's better. But right now, I think we all need to support each other a little bit more. And if it is just a basic question or reassurance or something that anyone wants to ask, pop me a message or email.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this evening. I really, really appreciate your time and all your kind of valuable knowledge. And for those that are kind of listening, I will be back next Monday with a new guest. We're talking more lifestyle next week. So I very much look forward to speaking to you all then.